Hi friends, today I have 14 fiction books featuring art-related themes that I want to share with you. So most of these are historical fiction and literary fiction, but I also have one thriller/horror book to share. So most of these have to do with painters and painting, but some of them are related to music and literature and also art school settings. And some of the themes are obsessive collecting, existentialism, feminism, and queer themes. So these are all books that I haven't read yet. If you are looking for a recommendations list of art-related books that I have read and would recommend based on that, I'm going to link a video where you can have that. But these I have not read yet. I'm just interested in and I thought it would be cool to share them with you guys. And I was inspired to put this list together because there is a readathon for art-related books going on this month called Framed in September, and so it inspired me to start looking for more books with art themes. So maybe this will inspire you to join. That would be great. But obviously you can and should read art-related books anytime. So let's get right into it. I have 14 books to talk to you about. And I'm going to start with the historical fiction. The first two books I'm going to talk about center around real painters in history. So the first one is The Luncheon of the Boating Party by Susan Vreeland. And this one is all about a Renoir painting by the same name. And it sounds really interesting. Luncheon of the Boating Party depicts a gathering of the artist's real friends enjoying a summer Sunday on a cafe terrace along the Seine near Paris. A wealthy painter, an art collector, an Italian journalist, a war hero, a celebrated actress, and Renoir's future wife, among others, are of the party. Parisians were bursting with a desire for pleasure and a yearning to create something extraordinary out of life. Renoir shared these urges and took on this most challenging project at a time of personal crises in art and love, all the while facing issues of loyalty and the diverging styles that were tearing apart the Impressionist group. Narrated by Renoir and 7 of the models and using settings in Paris and on the Seine, Vreeland illuminates the gusto, hedonism, and art of the era. With a gorgeous palette of vibrant, captivating characters, she paints their lives, loves, losses, and triumphs in a brilliant portrait of her own. So that sounds really interesting. Really cool that it features so many different characters and that it's based on a painting. And this was painted in the late 1800s, so that will be the setting for this as well. The next book is The Last Nude by Ellis Avery, and this one features the painter Tamara de Lempicka, who was an Art Deco painter that mostly lived and worked in France and the US. A stunning story of love, sexual obsession, treachery, and tragedy about an artist and her most famous muse in Paris between the world wars. Paris, 1927. In the heady years before the crash, financiers draped their mistresses in Chanel, while expatriates flocked to the avant-garde bookshop Shakespeare and Company. One day in July, a young American named Raffaella Fano gets into the car of a coolly dazzling stranger, the Art Deco painter Tamara de Lempicka. Struggling to halt a downward slide towards prostitution, Raffaella agrees to model for the artist, a dispossessed St. Petersburg aristocrat with a murky past. The two become lovers, and Raffaella inspires Tamara's most iconic Jazz Age images, among them her most accomplished and coveted works of art. A season as the painter's muse teaches Raffaella some hard lessons. Tamara is a cocktail of raw hunger and glittering artifice, and all the while, the romantic idol is threatened by history's darkening tide. So that sounds super intriguing and like the kind of book that really immerses you in the setting, so that late 20s Paris. So yeah. The next book also features a painter, but this one is fictional. And it's the only book that I have in physical format, and it is An Artist of the Floating World by Kazuo Ishiguro. And I've actually started reading this one. You can see I'm not super far in. So this one is all about a painter a few years after World War II is where the story starts. And it's him reckoning with the aftermath of World War II because his paintings were used for the imperialist movement. In the face of the misery in his homeland, the artist Masaji Ono was unwilling to devote his art solely to the celebration of physical beauty. Instead, he puts his work in the service of the imperialist movement that led Japan into World War II. Now, as the mature Ono struggles with the aftermath of that war, his memories of his youth and of the floating world the nocturnal world of pleasure, entertainment, and drink offer him both escape and redemption, even as they punish him for betraying his early promise. Indicted by society for its defeat and reviled for his past aesthetics, he relives the passage through his personal history that makes him both a hero and a coward, but above all, a human being. So I'm really enjoying this so far. It's very much a bread and butter kind of novel for me, and I love Kazuo Ishiguro, so I'm also finding it kind of similar in some ways to The Remains of the Day, which I reread very recently. You know, a main character that kind of takes his time revealing more of himself to the reader, a little bit willfully ignorant, and not wanting to face things from his past that are affecting him in the present. So very much my kind of book. But yeah, I'll be reading this month, so I will be talking about it later in the month at some point, and you can come back and see what my thoughts were if you like. Next is A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr, and this one was written in the 80s but set in the 20s. Tom Birkin, a veteran of the Great War and a broken marriage, arrives in a remote Yorkshire village where he is to restore a recently discovered medieval mural in the local church. Living in the bell tower surrounded by the resplendent countryside of high summer and laboring each day to uncover an anonymous painter's depiction of the apocalypse, Birkin finds that he himself has been restored to a new and hopeful attachment to life. But summer ends, and with the work done, Birkin must leave. Now, long after, as he reflects on the passage of time and the power of art, he finds in his memory some consolation for all that has been lost. So that sounds very up my alley, probably leaning kind of melancholic and ponderous, maybe existential. And this one's considered a classic, and it is on the shorter side. The next one is a more modern release, and it is Maddalena in the Dark by Julia Fine. And this one is music related. A novel set in 18th century Venice at a prestigious art school about two girls drawn together by a dangerous wager. So this follows 15-year-old Louisa, who is a violinist, and her goal is to become like a top performer at her music school, and she would like to become Vivaldi's protege. Louisa is good at violin, but she is not the best. She has peers, but she does not have friends, until Maddalena. After a scandal threatens her noble family's reputation, Maddalena is sent to the Pietà to preserve her marriage prospects. When she meets Louisa, Maddalena feels the stirrings of a friendship unlike anything she has known. But Maddalena has a secret. She has hatched a dangerous plot to rescue her future her own way. When she invites Louisa into her plans, promising to make her dreams come true, Louisa doesn't hesitate. But every wager has its price, and as the girls are drawn into the decadent world outside the Pietà's walls, they must decide what it is they truly want and what they will do to pay for it. So it definitely sounds like it leans gothic and has queer themes. So yeah, I'm very interested. Next is Briefly a Delicious Life by Nell Stevens, and I've heard about this one on BookTube quite a bit, so it's been on my radar, but I still haven't checked it out. But this follows a ghost who falls in love with the writer George Sand. In 1473, 14-year-old Blanca dies in a hilltop monastery in Majorca. Nearly 400 years later, when George Sand, her two children, and her lover arrive in the village, Blanca is still there. A spirited, funny, righteous ghost, she has been hanging around the monastery since her accidental death. Blanca is enchanted the moment she sees George, and the magical novel unfolds as a story of deeply felt, unrequited longing, a teenage ghost pining for a woman who can't see her and doesn't know she exists. Charming, original, and emotionally moving, a gorgeous and surprising exploration of artistry, desire, and life after death. So yeah, like I said, I'm very interested. I've been hearing a lot about this one, and I love that unconventional narrator through a ghost. So that's all the historical fiction. So now I'm going to move on to the one horror/thriller, and it is The Collector by John Fowles. And it sounds really creepy. Withdrawn, uneducated, and unloved, Frederick collects butterflies and takes photographs. He is obsessed with a beautiful stranger, the art student Miranda. When he wins the pools, he buys a remote Sussex house and calmly abducts Miranda, believing she will grow to love him in time. So yeah, that sounds super creepy and unsettling, but also really intriguing. And so, definitely exploring the dark side of passion and the obsession with collecting beautiful things. So yeah, creepy, but in a kind of way where it makes you want to read it, or at least it does me. So I'm going to move on to literary fiction, and I have 7 books to share with you. The first one is Second Place by Rachel Cusk. A woman invites a famed artist to visit the remote coastal region where she lives, in the belief that his vision will penetrate the mystery of her life and landscape. His provocative presence provides the frame for a study of female fate and male privilege, of the geometries of human relationships, and of the struggle to live morally in the intersecting spaces of our internal and external worlds. With its examination of the possibility that art can both save and destroy us, Rachel Cusk's Second Place is deeply affirming of the human soul, while grappling with its darkest emotions. So it sounds like it'll definitely have feminist themes and kind of explore power dynamics in the art world and in relationships in general as well. And it sounds very up my alley. I still have not read any Rachel Cusk, but I feel like she could really be an artist that I might enjoy. I think her latest book, Parade, would also fit into the art-related books because it features artists. But I kind of want to start a little bit further back in her bibliography. So yeah, we'll see. Next is Septology by Jan Fosse, translated by Damien Searles. And this one also features a painter. And this is a series, actually, of 7 novels. And the whole collection is called Septology. And I tried to look up the pronunciation for the names. I apologize if I'm not doing a good job. I tried. Asla, an aging painter and widower who lives alone on the southwest coast of Norway, is reminiscing about his life. His only friends are his neighbor, Oislik, a traditional fisherman farmer, and Beyer, a gallerist who lives in the city. There, in Bjorkvin, lives another Asla, also a painter, but lonely and consumed by alcohol. Asla and Asa are doppelgangers, 2 versions of the same person, 2 versions of the same life, both grappling with existential questions about death, love, light and shadow, faith and hopelessness. So again, some existentialism, which I love. So I've been aware of the series and Jan Fosse, but I don't know, I've been kind of hesitant to check him out. But recently I saw that Brian from Bookish made a video where he featured books with beautiful writing, and he wrote a quote from the book, which I believe is from the beginning of the first book, and I actually really enjoyed that sample, and so it made me very interested in checking it out. Specifically because the writing is very particular. It's like sort of stream of consciousness, not quite, but definitely kind of repetitive and slow, which is something that may or may not work for people, but I'm definitely feeling very interested in checking it out now. Next is The Horse's Mouth by Joyce Carey, and this one follows a painter in London. Golly Jimson has an insatiable genius for creation and a no less remarkable appetite for destruction. Is he a great artist, a has-been, or an exhausted drunken ne'er-do-well? He is without doubt a visionary, and as he crisscrosses London in search of money and inspiration, the world as seen through his eyes appears with a newly outrageous and terrible beauty. So I read a sample of the beginning of this book, and the first paragraph really caught my attention, so I want to read it for you. I was walking by the Thames, half-past morning on an autumn day, sun in a mist, like an orange in a fried fish shop, all bright below, low tide, dusty water in a crooked bar of straw, chicken boxes, dirt and oil, from mud to mud, like a viper swimming in skim milk, the old serpent, symbol of nature and love. And I don't know that I'm using the right tone for that, but just the use of words in that, the imagery was so interesting, and that definitely made me very intrigued. So it definitely sounds like it's going to have some interesting writing, and it also features a questionable character, which is fun. And this was originally published in the 40s, and it's technically part of a series, but the books are only tangentially related, and so you really don't have to read all of them, and you don't have to read them in order. Next is the Vivisector by Patrick White, and this one was written and set in Australia in the 70s. Hurdle Duffield, a painter, coldly dissects the weaknesses of any and all who enter his circle. His sister's deformity, a grocer's moonlight indiscretion, the passionate illusions of the women who love him. All are used as fodder for his art. It is only when Hurdle meets an egocentric adolescent whom he sees as his spiritual child does he experience a deeper, more treacherous emotion in this tour de force of sexual and psychological menace that sheds brutally honest light on the creative experience. So this sounds really interesting. It was actually nominated for the Nobel Prize for Literature, and it actually almost won, but it was disqualified because the judges were offended because it poses the question of whether one can be both an artist and a human being at the same time, which makes me even more interested in checking it out. Next is The Blazing World by Sirens Muses, and this one has a really cool premise. A brilliant, provocative novel about an artist who, after years of being ignored by the art world, conducts an experiment. She conceals her female identity behind 3 male fronts. Presented as a collection of texts, edited and introduced by a scholar year after the artist's death, the book unfolds through extracts from Burton's notebooks, that's the artist, and conflicting accounts from others about her life and work. Even after she steps forward to reveal herself as the force behind 3 solo shows, there are those who doubt she is responsible for the last exhibition, initially credited to the acclaimed artist Rune. No one doubts the 2 artists were involved with each other. According to Burton's journals, she and Rune found themselves locked in a charged and dangerous psychological game that ended with the man's bizarre death. So yeah, I think it sounds super intriguing. It was originally published in 2014, and it was on the Booker long list. I actually ended up watching videos on YouTube featuring Sirens Muses, and I feel like she's such a fascinating person, so I'm very interested in checking out this book. And she also has some other ones that feature artists. Yeah, so I might check those out as well at some point. I have 2 more literary fiction books to share with you. Next up is Sirens Muses by Antonia Ingres, and this one was published in 2022, and it also features an art school setting. 4 artists are drawn into a web of rivalry and desire at an elite art school and on the streets of New York. It's 2011. America is in deep recession, and Occupy Wall Street is escalating. But at the elite Rin College of Art, students paint and sculpt in a rarefied bubble. Louisa is a thoughtful, observant 19-year-old when she transfers to Rin as a scholarship student, but she soon finds herself adrift in an environment that prizes novelty over beauty. Complicating matters is Louisa's unexpected attraction to her charismatic roommate Karina, the preternaturally gifted but mercurial daughter of wealthy art collectors. Gradually, Louisa and Karina are drawn into an intense sensual and artistic relationship, one that forces them to confront their deepest desires and fears. But Karina also can't shake her fascination with Preston Utley, a senior and anti-capitalist internet provocateur who is publicly feuding with visiting professor and political painter Robert Berger, a once controversial figurehead seeking to regain relevance. When Preston concocts an explosive hoax, the fates of all 4 artists are upended as each is unexpectedly thrust into the cutthroat New York art world. Now, all must struggle to find new identities in art, in society, and among each other. In the process, they must find either their most authentic terms of life, of success, failure, and joy, or risk losing themselves altogether. So it sounds like it's got a lot going on, but it sounds really interesting and fun. And it's interesting because we've got another Louisa in the school setting. I guess there's something artsy about that name. And the last book is Art and Lies by Jeanette Winterson, and this one sounds really fun and weird. Handel is a failed priest, but abiding Catholic with elitist tendencies whose work as a doctor forces him to consider social questions that he would probably rather avoid. Picasso, as she calls herself, is a young artist who has been sexually abused by her brother, but whose family thinks she is at fault for her dark moods. Sappho is, indeed, Sappho, the lesbian poet of ancient Greece, who here proclaims herself a sensualist and then proceeds to dissect the union of language and lust. The three converge in a place that may be England in a not too distant future, made ugly by pollution and even uglier by greed. This is not a novel, but an extended riff on art, sex, religion, social repression, the dangers of patriarchy, and everything that is wrong with the contemporary drift to the right. As such, it will be hard going for most readers, but those with patience will discover exceptionally evocative writing and a vivifying review of some much discussed contemporary issues. So I don't know, that description really sells it for me. It sounds super interesting. And kind of wacky. I don't know if it's actually going to lean surrealist or not. It's definitely very playful. I have read Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit by Jeanette Winterson, and she definitely likes to play with intertextuality. And this is, you can definitely tell that's going on in here. And I know that the chapters will change perspective, and the writing is definitely going to be kind of experimental. So it sounds like a fun, different kind of read. And that's all the books I had to talk to you about. I hope you found at least one that you were interested in, and maybe you'll join the readathon. Let me know if you are going to read anything for the readathon, even if it's not any of these books. I would love to know that. Or if you have read any of the books, let me know your thoughts. I love hearing what other people thought of books I'm interested in. That's always helpful to know. But yes, and for my next video, I would love to do the same thing, but for nonfiction books. And so if it's past that point and it's already out, I'm going to add it in the cards in case you want to watch it. But otherwise, stay tuned because that should be coming really soon. Yes, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.